This story went viral a few days ago, and I want to provide more clarity. Now, a medical doctor who lives in the state of Virginia, he was born in 1960 in the United States. He was issued with a US birth certificate, and throughout his life, he's had multiple US passports issued to him by the US Department of State. Now, obviously, people who are born in the US, they acquire US citizenship. The common law principles, jus soli, or even the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution, states that anyone who's born on US soil, even including babies of undocumented immigrants, children born to people with no papers, children of visitors to the United States, children of students in the United States, it does not matter. So long as you were born in the United States, it does not matter what the immigration status of your parents are. You become a US citizen because you were born on US soil. Jus soli means you were born on US soil, so you acquire US citizenship. Okay, doctor was born on US soil, and so he thought he was a US citizen. He applied a few months ago to renew his US passport, and the US Department of State met him with some shocking news. They denied the application and said, "You've actually lost your US citizenship. You were never a US citizen. Although you were born in the US, you are not a US citizen because your parents were diplomats. Your father was an Iranian diplomat. Your father was working with the the embassy in the United States, and so the 14th Amendment of the US Constitution did not apply to him because his father or his parents were not subject to the jurisdiction of the US. Again, an exception to this jus soli principle is diplomats, because diplomats are generally not subject to the jurisdiction of the US. Remember that generally diplomats again have immunity from civil and criminal prosecution. And so although this man was born in the United States, he is not a US citizen. Now, again, saying that or representing that you are a US citizen in order to obtain a benefit by, for example, applying for a US passport when you are not a US citizen has very serious US immigration consequences. Honest in your mistaken belief that you are a US citizen where you are not a US citizen, then you will trigger this false claim to US citizenship. According to Matter of Zhang, it's a recent case law, that the law that states that false claim to US citizenship makes you inadmissible and makes you deportable. It does not mention a knowing or a willful false representation of US citizenship. The only thing that it requires is the falsity of the representation. The representation that you're a US citizen does not need to be both false and willful. It only needs to be false. And so long as the representation was false, they don't care if you were honest. You are liable under false claim to US citizenship. Now, if you've made this false claim to US citizenship and you've made it after September 30th, 1996, then you become, if you are inadmissible under this ground of law, then you become permanently barred from admission, or you are inadmissible. It means you cannot get a green card. If you are outside the US, you cannot get any type of visa, and you cannot enter the United States. Again, if you're in the US, then you cannot get a green card. In most cases, there are no immigrant visa waivers available. However, there's a narrow exception available to certain people, and in order to be able to take refuge under this exception, 3 conditions must exist. Number 1, the person who falsely claimed to be a US citizen, both or each of your parents must be a US citizen or must have been a US citizen. Number 2, the person falsely claiming to be a US citizen must have permanently resided in the United States before they turned 16 years old. And number 3, the person who's falsely claiming to be a US citizen must have reasonably believed at the time they were making such representation that he or she truly was a US citizen. In that case, when these 3 conditions exist, then the person is not inadmissible. So this is a very strict law that barely has any exceptions apart from this sole exception. if you are found liable under false claim to U.S. citizenship, again, you become inadmissible and you become deportable. It means that you can't be sent to U.S. immigration court, and deportation proceedings will be commenced against you, and you could be ordered removed or deported from the United States. So this medical doctor, unfortunately for him, is in this situation. He's now moved from being a U.S. citizen to being undocumented. I believe